Welcome to the next step, yeah, the next phase, where the sky ain't the limit, it's just a place. Next level vibes for your ears today. Hey, next level, next level. Take it up, never settle. Next level, where the stories turn special. It's the Next Level Podcast.
What's up, everybody, and welcome back to the Next Level Podcast. I hope you enjoyed the new intro. It's much more country and it's probably closer to our Texas roots, if we're going to be honest. So I hope you enjoy it. Today, we sit down with Mr. Cameron Ford, an absolute giant within our industry. Cameron and I met in 2015 at HITS. He was instructing a detection class. I remember sitting in and thinking, this guy's crazy. He's introducing all of these methodologies that he learned with like dolphins and stuff. And I'm thinking, what does this have to do with canine? Well, the truth is marker training and terminal markers and all the things he were teaching in that class were something that was really cemented in my brain, because I remember something he said that really stuck with me. And it was simple. Although I was having success with my dog and some other dogs I was helping out with, eventually I was gonna be introduced to a dog that my methodology did not work best for. And when I was teaching a handler course, I have to give Cameron credit. I called him and I said, hey, are you willing to teach your methodology through Skype, which is kind of dating ourselves, and help me teach your methodology within a class? And credit to Cameron, knowing that I was using a lot of primary reward system for my dogs, he was able to really walk through the process, walk through that system, and help our class in its entirety. So I was always very thankful for that. And that's really when our relationship started. I was able to get on his podcast a couple times, and throughout the years, he's been someone that I've been able to call a friend, ask for advice, and he's been just nothing but a gentleman over the years. So without further ado, and by the way, this is part one of two, so this is a longer podcast. We decided to break it down in two because I think it's better if we do it that way. But I would say it definitely gets better. So please stay tuned for part two. But without further ado, please help me welcome Mr. Cameron Ford.
It's a really highly unregulated industry. Your first question shouldn't be how much something is when it comes to people's safety. It's never going to be the perfect alert most times. The weakest link is always the human. It's just rehearsal. Training should be, how do I find my gaps? If you could light your decoy on fire, you'd want to see if your dog would bite the person on fire. My main goal as a supervisor is reduce the guessing as much as possible. I'm for it in the sense of we can have national standards. We'll kind of go from a general labor kind of mentality to a much more specialist mentality. The entire thing's blank. Look at this fucking fat clown showing up. The reason for the acquisition was they bought Ford Canine to basically create Stratus Canine, which is the bomb dog detection dog services side of it. And with the way that it works is I'm CEO of both companies now, but of course I have a huge group of people that I work with that have all these different specialties, and there's different families within the company. There's a part of the company called Ingresso Tech. They have all the technology. So the detectors for people walking through to tell you if you got weapons on you or not. And it's kind of cool because it's mixed with AI. So it can tell you like what pocket it's in, what might it be. Bag scanners, it's called Evolve. You put the bags through it. It's the same kind of thing. It'll tell you we've identified this thing in the bag. It could be a weapon or it could be whatever. So they had these things before they bought us, and they were contracting out to other bomb dog companies depending on location. And then, Dan Donovan, who's kind of the founder of it, had basically just seen, he's not a dog guy, but he saw just varying qualities of dogs. And even for him who didn't know, was like, some are okay, some maybe not. And actually his wife, Rachel Yucatel, who a lot of people may know from back in the day in 2005, that was the Tiger Woods thing. So she was one of the ones that Tiger was hooking up with way back in the day. So anyhow, she interviewed me for her podcast, Misunderstood. She's a big, huge dog fan. We discussed, dogs and all kind of stuff. And then she asked about commercial, detection dogs. And I just said, it's a really highly unregulated industry. You're going to get the full gamut of what types of dogs are out there. Unfortunately, a lot of it is window dressing and so forth. So she showed Dan, and then Dan reached out to me, and then fast forward a year ago, they said, hey, would you sell? And here's what we want to go do. And at first, I really wasn't sure I wanted to, but then it also created a level of stability, which was nice that, we had a team. I have a marketing team now. I have a guy that edits the podcast for me when I need to. It doesn't really need much, but he also helps with the marketing side of things, creates the ads. And then we have a full accounting team. We have other business development people who go out there and go find the business for us all. So it made sense. And it also really helped us be able to, as people know, I've been at the Michael Ellis School for the past couple of years. And this really set up the opportunity because I was going to have to start renting the whole place from Michael pretty soon. And I wasn't sure if I was going to be big enough to support all that. Well, then after this acquisition, they rent the entire property, and then now we can run both businesses, Stratus Canine and Ford Canine, at the same location, do classes, do dog training, all the whole 9 yards, and get a bunch of teams prepped to go work for us. So we have a lot of contractors. We still do, like a lot of people do. We have a lot of independent contractors, and a vast majority have had to come through us, go through training so we can review them and vet them, things of that nature. And then still do the Ford Canine stuff, still do the classes, the seminars. So it also, gave Natalie a pay raise by working under the company, had another trainer here for a while. And we just replaced that trainer. So we have a new trainer coming on who was a handler for us. We actually just promoted within that handler is now a trainer for us. And then I got a business manager. So his job is to go get stuff, and we coordinate every day. So the joke I make now is it was like being promoted to captain. So I spent a lot of time sitting in front of a computer screen, reviewing spreadsheets, talking to clients, doing this kind of stuff. And it's pulled me away for a little while from doing the dog training, the stuff I loved. I'm now getting back into it because now the baby of Stratus Canine is now a toddler, so it can walk on its own. I don't have to monitor it as much. I got a great team that can go do stuff. And then it's allowed me to get back out there, back on the road, go out there and work with agencies again, build, some good stuff online that we're doing. So yeah, that's been the last year pretty much in a nutshell.
It's a lot of changes, man. A lot of changes, because you were really focusing on the training aspect more than anything. And now you're essentially running a company providing this service. So any big surprises, anything in the industry since you're on the back end now? And I'm sure you're involved in everything that surprised you about what you're seing?
In a lot of ways, it just reconfirmed why I avoided that side of the business for the long time. The problem, or the things that we deal with, because there's various things you deal with, but one of the bigger things I deal with is just client education, those that are hiring the detection dog companies. We have a webinar coming out about this where the first thing I get asked by the companies is, the first question always is, how much is it? And I'm trying to get them to realign to, like, your first question shouldn't be how much something is when it comes to people's safety to a certain level. It should be, what are the qualifications of this, and what are you doing different than the other ones that are out there? And there's going to be some people that are going to have some differentiators for different reasons. There's going to be some that are going to be really the same. But the bigger part is just the client doesn't even know what to ask or what to look for. So the bigger lift I have is educating these clients to, whether you use us or not, here's the things that you should be looking for and asking. You should be red teaming every event if you can. Make sure that they're actually finding stuff. It's good for them to see what the results are. It reduces complacency, and there's also some accountability. If there's something that happens, or something gets through, why did it get through? Was it a handler just because they're working a vet, they never find anything? Did they not really see the dog through a change? Because it's never going to be the perfect alert most times. It's going to be something that a handler has to be able to read and go, I don't like that. Let's push that to further review, and or, hey, I'm calling this, if it's in an area that's like, we're trying to secure it. Hey, there's something that should be checked over here. My dog didn't give me the typical alert, but I think there could be something here. So there needs to be things like that we test and see, can handlers feel confident about reading what they're seeing in their dogs? Because it's just not going to be, in most cases, as clean and as perfect as it looks in training. Because training, unfortunately, for a lot of teams is already set up with known outcomes. Like our hides are set up a certain way. We train the same locations frequently, and this isn't just commercial, or this is everybody, unfortunately, but a lot of training is designed with preconceived outcomes, and the dogs have to do the way that we expect, and we never really put it hard enough that somebody who's trying to have bad intentions aren't going to make it really easy on you, whether that's the narcotic side of the house or the bomb side of the house or whatever it is. In most cases, somebody is trying to get it past whatever levels of security or whatever levels are in place to protect and or identify. They're going to try to get past that. And the weakest link is always the human. And if I can get the human not to believe the dog, not to trust the dog, or not believe what they see, I'm pretty much 3/4 of the way there to have winning that situation. So, but training doesn't look like that. Training is putting the hide in the filing cabinet. And I always joke around, like, how many times have you ever found anything for real in a filing cabinet? But yet, man, we love those. We don't conceal our aids like somebody's going to conceal it for real. And we can do simple things to address that, but we don't. It's rehearsed training. It's just rehearsal. We put it in a filing cabinet, we put it in a cabinet, we put it in a drawer, put it in the car bumper, put it in the seam of the door, all the things that we do, because, bite work is always taken pretty seriously in a lot of ways. We're very creative when it comes to protection work, but we're not as creative as we could or should be when it comes to detection. And I'm trying to push that, one, in the commercial world and obviously in the professional world as well. Hey, let's look at things from a operational perspective, so that way you get better and more confident about calling something versus a little bit of like, well, maybe over here, I think I have something. Or they walk out and go, I didn't find anything, but it doesn't mean there's anything there. The handlers always have the backup. So if they miss something, they have the excuse. And if they find something but nothing, or they call an alert but they don't find anything, they also got the excuse that way. So we cover our asses a lot of times as handlers, going, well, they said, oh, there's nothing there. Oh, well, yeah, my dog just kind of, showed a little bit of something, but no, I wasn't really calling that. Or the flip side is they call an alert and we say, no, nothing's there. They're going to get like, well, we trained here, 16 years ago, and there might be some odor still there that my dog is hitting on. So, or if it's a real operational one, they let's say it's a vehicle stop and they deploy the dog, they call an alert, they toss the car, they find nothing. They will come up with some way to go, well, he said he had friends in the car before, and his friends were probably drug users. So, or this person has an arrest history for prior use of narcotics. So it was probably there. My dog, and maybe, but it's not as big as we think it is. So anyway, what I try to share a lot with, within what we do is how we get better and more effective and efficient at that, and less guessing if we can get through that.
Sure. And imagine if we took the opposite perspective of, hey, I think there's something deficient in my training. Can we talk about what that may be? Whether it's me breeding the dog, whether it's the dog not recognizing odor, or maybe the packaging that's in he's never seen before. Maybe that environment has something to do with the failure. But there's so many attributes or aspects to detection that it's really infinite. And so, you deploy enough and you recognize, hopefully not the hard way, that there's deficiencies in your game. But in training, we should be setting up for those deficiencies. And we got to be honest about those things. Is if we're not failing in training, then something is wrong, in my opinion.
100%. Everything you said is what I share frequently when I travel and I work with agencies and things like that. Is training shouldn't be that expected outcome. Training should be, how do I find my gaps? And training is the safe place to fail. I should have no problem failing in front of all the people that are there with me because we're on the same team. And I'd rather us fail together in this group than fail in front of people who don't know what we do and don't understand what we do. So it's important that we all get it. There's a lot of mentality for all of us. We don't want our dogs to suffer in a sense of like, well, they didn't get the win. We also have our egos that we don't want to look bad or miss something. So it's important that, again, we kind of realign the priorities of training, especially once you're done and certified. And we can still branch off into problem solving fundamentals, other stuff that's relevant when it needs to be. But when you look at the comparison, when we review training records and so forth, there's a lot of fundamentals, basics, and things like that, and very little in comparison, important challenges that we're putting the teams through. Just like you said, putting the odors in different types of vessels that they're going to be contained within. Being a little creative, because I get it. In some cases, there's controls in place to keep in this case, let's say narcotics, from being lost or weighing differently in the end than what they were issued, and all these different things that we do. So there's these protective things in place, like plastic heat sealed bags and so forth, that most of our narcs are never going to be in. However, what can I do though to change that picture to the dog, to show it differently each time, to not just we do a lot of scent identification. We get really good at that, but we're not as good at generalization. And that's, I think, a part that it gets missed, is everybody does scent ID, focusing on here's the odor, these are not the odors, but we're not as good as showing like the dog, here's this odor this way, here's the same odor this way, here's the same odor slightly this way, here's the odor made by this manufacturer, made by this. So, again, I have to, when I share stuff, is get people to focus on there's identification and there's generalization, and we want to get better at both. One gets more attention than another one again, but if we can level that scale out better, we're going to be much better off in the future by doing both more regularly, not too much of one or too much of the other.
How do you simultaneously address the fact that you want the dog to generalize a lot of things while still maintaining the idea of what target odor should be?
So you kind of said it earlier, it's creativity, because again, the adversary in this case, the person who's trying to do something with contraband, whatever it is, our goal is to, as best we can, be imaginative. Prior to 9/11, no one thought about flying a plane into a building, but now we do. After 9/11, people didn't really think about, cars running through crowds of people, but now we do. So my goal, or what I try to share to trainers and handlers, is literally using a detection joke. Think outside the box. Be really creative with what you're doing with your substances, so that way the dog gets better at it. And you can, again, depending on the dogs and where they're at in training, we can introduce these concepts in a fundamental setup, and then we can also reintroduce these in a more operational setup. So a lot of what I have modified over the years is in my discrimination phase, when I'm teaching the dog the odor, and I have to kind of clarify for people, identification and discrimination, it kind of goes back and forth, kind of means the same thing. It just means like I show the dog, hey, if you sniff these things, let me know which one has odor in it and ignore anything else that doesn't. Generalization is, hey, you've been training on this odor this way, whatever my kit is, however it's prepared, however it's stored. So the dog will get lots of reinforcement history to that particular kind of odor profile. And if I can change it in some way or another, maybe it's training on somebody else's kit, maybe it's taking my kit and finding a way to, example I give a lot of times is wrap it in tinfoil, knock down that odor level quite a bit, change the packaging if we can, put something else with it that might be there operationally that will throw the dog off a little bit, but the substances we're looking for is still there. So being creative like we are in the patrol work, where we come up with all kinds of amazing, crazy ideas to deal with somebody who, the joke I make all the time, and many have heard me say it, is most people in bite work, if you could light your decoy on fire, you'd want to see if your dog would bite the person on fire, because you're like, well, shit, maybe a bad guy might do that one day. And I love the creativity that comes from that, but we don't do that same kind of thinking and detection enough. Like you said, we have kind of our routines that we do. And if we just become creative and take my substances and show the dog these substances in many different ways, and then the bomb world, it's manufacturers, how is it made? And then what other things might be put with it that creates a different odor profile than just, let's say, a bag of smokeless powder. Smokeless powder is going to be usually put with other stuff or mixed in or put into some type of container. And we have to show these dogs these things, because without this is where the handler's confidence drops, because the dog isn't going to be as demonstrative in its changes when it's something that's significantly different. And when I say significantly different, that significant part is different to dogs. Some dogs are just kind of natural at generalizing, to the point where these are sometimes my falsing dogs, because they'll go close enough, My other dogs with high memory are going to be like, not what I'm looking for. It's close, but I'm not going to really give you much. So the more we show these handlers, depending what they got, I want to be reasonable in the way I present these different things to them, so that way the dog has a better understanding of what they're looking for and also what they're not looking for. The firearms research showed us a lot of that stuff.
Oh, you hit on something that I wanted to talk about. I was planning to talk about it later on, but you brought it up, so let's do it.
Okay.
So what about, since we're talking about firearms detection, what's your feeling with bomb detection dogs also alerting to firearms? And can you explain maybe the argument both ways?
Yeah. And there is valid arguments on both sides. I would say neither one is specifically wrong or right. It's depending on your operational aspects. So in the law enforcement community, you're better able to get away with it having a dog trained under both aspects, both disciplines, because generally you have the command and authority to shut things down, to handle it. You have the assets of EOD or other, specialized units that can handle this, and no one gets any heartburn if they shut something down and it ended up being a shell casing in someone's bag that they forgot about because they went to the range, a month ago. But in the commercial world, there is a bigger part to consider. So in the commercial world, our company separates the two, because you're talking in some cases hundreds of thousands of dollars, maybe millions of dollars, depending on where you're at. And if you shut it down for a shell casing or a shotgun shell or whatever it is that is truly benign in that situation, but because it's a bomb dog by definition, and when it alerts, my action on fine procedures need to be action on fine procedures for an explosive dog. So the commercial world, it runs a little bit of a risk as to what you do. And then the client's response to that, like how are they going to get frustrated, pissed off, etc. And these are some of the conversations I've had with clients. I'm like, this is why we separate the two. We want to know for us and for you, when this dog alerts, we know what we're dealing with, and we know the proper action on fine procedures for either or. We don't want to guess in your world. We don't want to potentially shut down. I mean, our company deals with a lot of tech companies. We deal with NVIDIA, Google, Apple, all these different big ones that are out there. And they're not really wanting to shut down the operation for really any reasons, right? Even when we get a bomb alert, there might be some, bomb dog alerting. We might get some, questions that slow this process down. So in my experience and opinion in educating people in the commercial world, I prefer them separately just because it creates cleaner responses and action on fine procedures. In the law enforcement world, it's a different game in that sense because of the assets law enforcement agencies have in comparison to the other side. And I can say, even on the commercial side, a lot of stuff we do, we have the bomb squad there, we have, but I'm trying to prevent dogs running over dogs, because the client in some cases, even if our company, our SOP says we only have, if a dog alerts, that's the one that we're calling. We're not bringing another dog up. It doesn't mean that the client can't ask the law enforcement canine to come up.
Sure.
But as I share with, of course, and the law enforcement canine guys get this too. I'm just going to tell them, like, you guys have all seen this. Anytime a dog comes into a room and falses, usually the subsequent dogs either show interest or also false in the same spot. So why does that happen? Well, there's a lot of reasons why. Some of them are hypothetical. Some of them are probably actual. It depends on the situation. But what I want to do, my main goal as a supervisor, is reduce the guessing as much as possible and to go with what we have. The information we have is canine alerted. The next steps should be the EOD asset, if it's a bomb dog, come up and run through their means. Now I won't go into the details, but we do have our SOP that it walks through various stages before we hit the bomb squad. So if we do get a canine, either a handler calling interest, like they don't really feel great about it, but they're calling it, we have a certain protocol we follow that way. If it's a hard hit, then we have a protocol that we follow that way. And in there are some measures to mitigate risk, but also facilitate information. So that way we can make good decisions as quick as we can. So again, if I have a dog cross-trained, it throws a little bit of a monkey wrench into this, because it's a very different process for these type of disciplines and how we handle it. So again, that's kind of where I land on it. I think both can be done, easier on the law enforcement world, more difficult in the commercial world. But the harder thing is in the commercial world is very common because you can go to the client and say, hey, our dog, like, and I guarantee if it was a big enough thing, if client said, I want your dogs to find drugs, guns, and bombs, no doubt somebody would do it. Hopefully not many, but there would be some that see that dollar sign and say, well, it's commercial. I'm not doing anything law enforcement related. Why not? And I'll even say we had a dog that worked for us at one of the events, not one of ours, but a contractor dog. His firearms dog also could find narcotics. And he told us that, and we knew that. And our staff knew that. And what we did was we just put that dog in a certain area that if it got a hit, the handler had a protocol. Hey, my dog is showing some interest in your bag. Is there anything in the bag? He is trained on narcotics. We don't care about that, but is there anything in your bag we need to know about? And we've already got the person separated. We already have our security team right there. So it's no harm, no foul in that one because it's a firearms dog. So his indication was, and he did get, a hit on a bag or two that had narcotics in it. We just said, hey, unfortunately, you can't come in with this, but if you remove it and you take it out, whatever you do is not a law enforcement matter to us, but you can't come in with that. And again, it didn't slow anything down. It wasn't a problem. Is it my preferred way? No, but I was able to, based on that situation, put that handler in a location where if it popped up, it wasn't a major problem for us. And we had measures in place with the technology right there to also verify what was going on based on the dog alert. So the cleaner we make it, the better information we can act upon. And that's kind of the philosophy I go on, especially in the commercial world, just because clients don't know what they don't know, and they're going to push for certain things because in many cases, we all understand it is a checkbox that they have to say, we have this type of security here. So whether it be the metal detectors, cameras, dogs, things of that nature, it's in that role. And our jobs as subject matter experts is to make sure that we're utilizing these tools in the best possible way for the best possible outcomes for protection of people attending these events and have good outcomes.
I love that because basically what you're saying is the information plus the environment should dictate your tactics. Like the information you have, and that's the handler, the dog, the training, like everything should go into the process of how are we going to move forward with that. And that makes a lot of sense to me because, I mean, that's what we should be teaching is your environment and the information should dictate all those things. And those things can change often too. So we have to be on the critically thinking side. And I know you've talked about it in another podcast about how much you put into the handlers that you train to be critical thinkers. Can you talk to us a little bit about why that's so important to you?
Yeah, because we are more than the old school terminology of being a dope on a rope. We are the part of the team that is a thinking and decision-making aspect. The dog is a detection aspect. So I need a handler to first and foremost interpret what the dog is telling you. Based on the information the dog is telling you, also have good situational awareness about where you're at, why are you there, and if you have to share information to other units and supervisors, you can do so in a way that is clearly and easily understood. Because when a situation, let's just say the bomb dog world, we have an indication, we need as much info as possible, and maybe not. There's technology there to give us that information to corroborate what the dog is doing and or give us information about the area in which the dog indicated. I need the handler to be able to say, this is what happened. This is what's in front of the item. This is what's behind the item. This is what's to the left, to the right, and above and below. And here's how I got there. Or here's how we came, our exfil and infill, where did we come from? So that way, those in the big green suit or the robots that get pushed up to those locations can do so in the best, most effective way possible. And in most cases, a time-saving mechanism that we have to deal with. So I also need handlers to be able, because what we're going to be facing in the years ahead, there isn't a specific time frame on it, but in the years ahead, we aren't going to be, right now, dog handlers are basically viewed as general labor in the sense of like, here's a dog, you know how to do it, da 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 da. Europe is a little bit different, and it's because they invest. So I call a lot of my European counterparts specialists at what they do because they do properly invest in the training of the humans and the dogs together over extended periods of time compared to us. I would say on average in the United States, I can say there's a lot of schools in the East Coast that are 12 to 14 weeks, but there's a lot of schools in the East or on the West Coast that are 6 weeks long. And so let's just land in the middle. Let's just call it 10 weeks is the average school length in the United States for a lot of teams. There's going to be 10, like I said, plenty that are higher or lower, but let's just call it 10 weeks. Our counterparts in Europe, most are a year. Their average is a year or so of time before they go operational. That is significant in its ability to make my handlers specialists at what they do, to be able to be really good interpreters, to be able to make really good decisions, share information appropriately. And they get it because of that time invested in their early development as a handler and to the dog. They can hit the ground running with more confidence and better skill sets. With what's going to happen to us here in the United States and worldwide as well, technology is going to level up the playing field, which means a lot of the technology that's coming out now is going to provide confirmation information to the handlers. When the dog indicates whatever apparatus we have will tell you it's this percentage part, or this is percentage level of accuracy the dog is on a target substance is trained to detect. And the joke I make all the time is I'm going to tell all these young handlers, you have no idea how hard I had it. I had to fucking guess. I always just had to guess what, I think it's what my dog's alerting to. So that is in the very, very near future. Dr. Hall down at Texas Tech and other ones have been playing with a lot of these technologies, and they're developing some stuff. There's other competitors out there that are doing it as well, and some of them are a little bit further along than what the universities are at, because one is funded by universities and grant money. The other ones are funded privately, which has more money behind it. But no matter what, whatever the time frame is, 5 years or less or whatever it is, it's going to change, because now the handler is going to have to articulate not just that they have an alert, but they're going to have to also articulate what happened before, like how to best deploy the dog based on conditions, and what will help the technology be more accurate along with the dog. So it's going to force a level of education to evolve, to be better about what we do, and we'll kind of go from a general labor kind of mentality to a much more specialist mentality. And that will also make the courts and the legal system more happy about what we do. Just like body cameras have changed the world for law enforcement, these technologies where the dogs are a platform for the technology and also level the playing field for the handler on its interpretation skills, like how well we know. Well, we know as a handler, I'm calling this, and it was confirmed by the device or the biometrics in the dog that tell us, based on the data and the AI, that the dog is at 85% accuracy level, that this indication is connected to a target substance.
That's awesome.
So, yeah.
On our side, Cameron, as far as detection is concerned, when we're training our new handlers through our program, it's a minimum of 6 months to a year before they get to deploy. And a lot of that time is just allowing them to really understand what's being asked of them, to use your terminology, to be a specialist, and to also to deploy alongside as a spotter with our handlers who are going out there. This shows me dedication. This shows me they understand like the whole picture. And it develops trust within our team, so they understand like we're all using the same terminology. We all understand what our mission is and how to achieve that mission. And I found that to be really, really useful, because one of our last deployments that we had was for CPAC, which is the conservative conference, which, right now it's April 9th. So who knows what will happen tomorrow, but April 9th, things are it's in a really contentious point in the United States. And one of the guests for CPAC was the Crown Prince of Iran. And so you can imagine the security that was there. Same thing. We had our governor come in from Texas. We had all these high profile people come in. And it surprised me that when they hired us, they didn't ask a lot of questions. We met with their security team. We met with the people who are going to be making decisions. A lot of the things that you said, like what are the protocols? God forbid there's an alert. How are we moving forward? All those things were really important to us and things that we had to bring up, but they had worked with multiple canine teams in the past. And so when I talk to the people making decisions, it's very evident that we're just checking a box here. And so just because they're checking a box doesn't mean that I have to take that same philosophy. So we had two spotters assigned to each team that was out there, and they got to see, these are people who maybe haven't had a lot of time on the leash yet, to see what exactly it's like. And it's chaotic sometimes, and the environment changes often. And you're talking about people yelling and screaming, and just that environment, it's hard to replicate in any training environment. But I think it's so beneficial. So, for the people that may be listening who are rightfully so want to get out there and just work a dog and just go out there and kick butt. My advice, and I'm sure yours would be similar, and I'll get your take here in a second, is I know we're in a rush to do that, but there's nothing wrong with taking your time and making sure that you have that opportunity to see it in and all the aspects that deployments really need. That attention to detail is so important. So what are your thoughts with that?
No, 100%. And circling it back to that handler education, you got to know your trade craft. So if you're a bomb dog handler, you need to know about explosives. You need to know what sets them off. You need to know how not to set them off, how to identify them, follow different protocols based on the environment you have. And like, are we there for a reason? I call that a reactive search. We've been called there. We're there for a reason. That's a reactive. Most of what the commercial world does is a proactive search. We're there ahead of time to make sure things are swept, locked down, but you need to know protocols for both proactive or reactive. Know what you're looking for, how to identify it. Because sometimes if I see the rattlesnake, I don't need to walk up to it and go, yeah, that's a rattlesnake. So we need to make sure as handlers, you know your trade craft, you know what it is you're doing, you know everything about the adversary. Like, what's the mental aspect to this? What is the psychological profile? And what's in a bomb dog world, what's the threat assessment for my area? What items have been in my area? But I got to teach handlers how to go about getting that information. What do you look for? How do you obtain this? If your company doesn't provide it for you, or the local law enforcement agent doesn't provide it in a packet before these events, we have our con op. So we have a con op set up. We have our law enforcement partners there. We have other specialists that are there. Maybe we have an EP division, executive protection division, that's also there to do stuff with high profile guests. Mm-hmm. So that way we're all synergetic. We all know what's going on. So if I have handlers who don't know, let's say, the threat of the area or the common explosives found in this area for the past 3 years, we, again, are more than just the dope on the rope. We have to be that specialized part. So again, like you just said, investing in that education so that way these teams are specialists and they can operate independently if they need to. Like, I don't need to be there to hold their hand. They don't need somebody over their shoulder giving them thumbs up, you found it. They can make decisions, know what to do, be well-versed, so that way, again, just like you pointed out, at events, you're going to be usually at a checkpoint in a lot of cases. You're going to be working with $10 an hour security guards. So their job is just to wand people and look for a red light or green light above the thing as people walk through it. If you get an indication in your dog or you call something, you have to be able to articulate to the lowest common denominator what needs to be done next, as well as to the top of the level to those that are running the event. Like for us, we call it the EOC, our EOC area, so that way they know. And one of the lessons that we even had is at one of our events, as it shut down, we had night crew working and we had a firearms dog working. Firearms dog hit on a bag. The person didn't want to open their bag, so they said, you can't come in. And they followed that protocol accordingly. The problem was that the lesson that we had was our EOC thought it was a bomb dog that was working. So what they were wondering was, why aren't we doing the protocol this way? Because there's a bomb dog there. So we made some adjustments so that way those on camera and then those who are the security guards at the scene that are on the radios calling up know when there's a gun dog there versus when a bomb dog there. But because when situations are heightened, people skip steps because of adrenaline, whatever. Our handler did what they were supposed to do, but the people who ran the information up didn't know, and it was a quick 10-minute fix. But I was getting my phone calls from our EOC going, what's going on? We have a bomb dog alert, and this is happening. The person's walking away, and then we talked our way through it. No, it's a firearms dog. Did your handler tell them? Yep, my handler told these guys. And it's important because you again, look at the cop world. When this shit hits the fan, agencies are forced to work together. Let's say an officer involved shooting or an officer down shooting. Now you're going to have county, city, obviously in Texas, constables. You're going to have everybody showing up to go get this person. And if we can't, or we're not good at communication or how to share that information, problems will come out of it one way or the other. So the better our handlers are at disseminating information, making sure those around us understand it and are reciting it correctly, we can prevent confusion and reduce hiccups or, in some cases, inaction from occurring when we need to take action. So it's a critical piece that we make sure that we flesh these things out. And it starts off in the beginning stages in the implementation of handler training, going in through checking that, testing handlers, written tests, scenario-based training, moving through to basically, as we in the law enforcement world, our FTO period, getting them out there working with some teams. And we incorporate that even with our company. I will have handlers that are on the site working, but they're working with experienced teams. So they're 2-dog areas. It's just so that the new team gets experience, but they have the safety net of the experienced team also there. And then sometimes we can cut them loose in a low threat area and let you work this and see what decisions they're making. Because again, our system is set up in redundancies. We have cameras there. We can hear, we can watch, we can see what's going on. We call zone leads, our teams, our supervisors that are in the areas that are not just dog people, but they're in charge of the entire security of that spot. So if anything goes on, they're right there with it. And again, we are different. As a company, I've obviously seen a lot of companies, and I am lucky enough to have support features that a lot of dog companies are just the dog company that gets called in, and the two sides just don't know each other. The one company that's called whatever canine company up to go work with them, they don't know what the canine guys do or don't do. They just know the canine's there. And then the security company does their job. So the two things are working in parallel together versus working integrated together. And that is a piece that is really nice because it reminds you back, like being in a department, law enforcement agency. You have your different divisions. They all kind of understand what their jobs are. And if something bad happens, everybody kind of knows where to fall into place and how to execute it. But if they're working in parallel and something bad happens, we might crash into each other. We might go do different directions. And we want to mitigate that kind of problem sooner than later. But it's through the investment and the training that we put into it gives us better results, better outcomes at the end.
So with the FIFA World Cup coming to the United States, I'm sure you've gotten lots of inquiries about what your availability is going to be, and some of the things as far as requirements, or at least they've been presented to us, is they want person-born or vaporweight dogs to be able to smell explosives on people that may be moving, whether it be on them or in their bags. What's your feeling about that? And then we'll kind of dovetail to certifications and stuff like that.
I mean, it's let's just call it person-born type screening, pedestrian screening, mobile odor detection. As I've gotten better educated with it. So obviously, as we all know, Vaporwake was started in Auburn and has a very specific way they do it. And they have probably the biggest history of doing it. Since then, there's been the derivatives thereof. There's been, like I said, whether it be pedestrian screening, person-born, mobile odor, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. These other ones may do it in a slightly different way, or how they train it is their own unique way, different than the Vaporwake way. There are, I would say, the most successes that I've been educated on come from mostly finding firearms on people. That seems to be the most. There is very little data, or in the early 2000s, there might have been, and again, I've talked to Auburn and they've shared this with me, that they've had success. But it was also prior to social media, prior to a lot of stuff. And a lot of stuff back then was kept more quiet. Other countries that have Vaporwake dogs do have had hits with explosive related type things. The bigger part, so zooming out, let's go out from the Vaporwake side now out further. Well, now it becomes kind of, you don't know, because there isn't some type of uniform standard out there that we can properly test, I would say. There are various certification models that exist, but the models that I have seen have the harder part of making it look real, in the sense of going into a high pedestrian environment and having, people that we put into place that may or may not have, something on them to properly test. Unfortunately, it is, and I can't even pick on this type style, because even we all know this, even static bomb dogs, drug dogs, things of that nature, our standards for evaluation are really low. Like, and that's why I hate the term minimum standard. I prefer we get away from that and move to the standard, and we establish a standard that is more realistic. So I've kind of taken things to, I'm going to kind of go off the topic a little bit, because in order to evaluate, let's say, a team designed to locate something on a moving target, whether it be people, bags, et cetera, I have to be able to test it in a way that matches better the operational aspect versus the minimum standard, which would be 10 people to line up, or 10 people walking around a training center, and the dog finds the one person who's got like the 5 pounds of black powder in their bag. So what I've already taken the initiative of, and this is what we use in our system, is I called it an ORE, Operational Readiness Evaluation. You can go do your cert with whatever certification organization you want. I don't care. You go to Snoopy's certification school, Scooby-Doo's, whatever it is, because they're all more or less kind of the same. They have deviations a little bit here and there, but what they're not doing is, it like an ORE starts off with this. It starts off with a handler examination. Handlers are tested in the skill set that they're required to do. Okay, they have a passing score, 80% or higher. They immediately go to an odor recognition test. A baseline, does the dog know the odors, yes or no? So as an evaluator, unknown to the handler are X amount depending on discipline. Tell me your dog knows the odors. Okay, great. Now, at my discretion as the evaluator, you're going to search operational environments that you're expected to do for real. So whether it be large buildings, pedestrian environments, one vehicle at a time if I'm a narc handler, not a parking lot, or a bomb dog, a large parking lot. So I'm going to choose as the evaluator what ones you do. What I'm also going to do as the evaluator, one of those at my discretion will be double blind for you to do, and another one's going to be a complete control negative, a blank. The entire thing is blank. You have to be able to do both. You have to be able to go do the double blind, report back to me whether you found something or not, and then in your reporting back to me, if you did find something, that you're able to give me the pertinent information to do the next thing, whatever it is, narc, explosive, firearm, etc. And then on the complete blank, that you come back to me and you can say with confidence, there's nothing there. So at the end of that concludes the operational readiness evaluation. I got to see, do you know your stuff? Does your dog have a baseline of odor? And then can you go do the job in some form or fashion? And again, it's not going to be exactly like reality, but it's not going to be 5 cars, 2 fines, 5 rooms, 3 fines kind of thing. It's going to be as close as I can to your operational expectancy. And this is where the change happens, is it affects drug dog handlers a little bit more, because, I was just down in San Diego doing this to them. You're going to do 1 car at a time. And usually no more than 2 dogs search the same vehicle, but there's space between that. And what I also do is handlers don't search the same areas. We may all go to the same building, but what they don't know is I've set up these rooms for this team, these rooms over here for these teams. So when the handlers walk outside and they tell each other, oh yeah, my dog alerted the black trash can in whatever room. And when I see the handler come into a room and they're all hanging around the black trash can, I'm like, you guys have screwed each other over. You shouldn't talk, because just so you know, you guys are not searching the same areas. And then they're like, oh crap. So then the integrity kicks back in, because then now they won't talk to each other, because they realize passing info on actually only hurts them. And but to take to this level is also instigates fear, because now the rate of failure increases, as it should. Anything where we have specialists, the bar to get in needs to be higher. That's why I don't like the minimum standard conversation. I like, here is the standard. And then if you want additional traditional certifications, go wherever. Whatever's in your region, whatever works for you, I don't care. But you will have to pass an ORE. And I'm already getting, because I've been teaching this at the seminars, I'm getting agencies to send me or have me send them the OREs that we have written. And I tell them, like, look, I'll share the whole thing with you. You can put your logo on it, put your agency name. I don't give a crap. Do whatever you want, because this is the critical step for your program to show your teams are doing this. And the cool thing is, I've seen, big agencies, like whether it be NYPD or LAPD, I'll give you a perfect example. LAPD Metro basically does a form of this. They don't call it that, but they basically do this. The teams finish school, then they go out and they work, and they have like an FTO period. They're deploying, they're doing things, and it isn't until a certain point in time and or an apprehension that they can finally go to being signed off. And they don't certify under anybody. It's all in-house. They have to meet these benchmarks though. And if they don't meet these benchmarks, they're not certified, or they don't complete the, readiness test. So that's where, and again, I'm stealing this, these are things I've seen. This is the same thing that comes from a lot of special operations units. They make teams go through evolutions to all the way to the point where they're basically doing the qualification training. Like this is, and it matches much closer to what reality is than we shoot paper targets and I'm qualified. No, they have to do room clearance. They have to do dynamic entry. They have to do all these things before they're actually out there. So that's kind of how I'm equating the dog world. The dog world likes to, we want to shoot at paper targets and call us qualified when we don't even know how to clear a room properly. I'm using the firearms example because that can be related to a lot of people, And the cool thing is I'm seeing more and more agencies now not just doing the 40-round course of fire where you're just shooting in the Coke bottle of the paper target and you're qualified. They're finally now doing things like you have to clear a certain way, you have to do a reload, you have to shoot from different positions. So it's evolving, but the dog world needs to do the same thing.
Yeah, and as part of that, the ability to evolve in any industry, standards will always be something, or best practices will always be something that's pointed to. And so for us in the canine world, the Swig dog paper that had came out, I don't know, when was that? Early 2000s, 2004, 2005. That set a precedent, at least, of, hey, this is how things should go. And now you have organizations like OSAC and NIST who have taken that to the next level. How do you feel about national standards and what that's doing for the industry currently?
Yeah, I'm for it, in the sense of we can have national standards with some variations depending on specialties, depending on maybe even where you work at. But the reason why I know it works is because you have TSA dogs, no matter where they work in the United States, have a unified standard. Military working dogs have a unified standard. ATF dogs, unified. I can go on and on and on how that. But the minute you tell the law enforcement world, the commercial world, that they need to do the same thing, they freak out. No, you don't get it. We're different. We can't do this. And it's all mostly excuses. There are some, I will agree, there are some levels of specialty, but if they can do this, unified standard with whatever approved modification that needs to happen, not watering it down to make it easier, but we can move it into, let's do the bomb dog one again. Your dog is a dynamic dog. You're searching a moving environment. You're following a target that is moving versus a static. Then that's what we'll do. But again, it's proven worldwide. You go to the UK, they have a national standard, NASDU. Some hate it, some love it, but regardless of it, they have to do it. Australia has been trying to do this, and I would say, for the most part, with the exception of the commercial piece, it is pretty unified because the states over there, their police forces operate with most of the same things. But they operate different than us because they don't import dogs in as easily as we do. They are forced to have breeding programs. There's a lot of investment in the training, education, and time. So it's very clear that we can do it. And of course, the arguments always are, we're the United States. We're land of the free. We can do what we want. And I get that. But I also can say, why can't the bomb dog, let's just make it simple, a static bomb dog works for an agency in the Northeast. It responds to bomb threats. It does proactive sweeps. It does this. If I take that same individual and I put them in LA, shouldn't they be able to do the same thing? So what I feel we can do is we could get there if we wanted to, but unfortunately, unless some type of federal mandate comes down and says thou shall, they won't. And it's going to be because I get it. my first department I worked for was a 35-man department. They're going to say, well, I can't. It's harder for us for X, Y, or Z. Again, there's truth. But I also know if you told them they shall, they'll figure it out. They'll either link them with a bigger agency, make sure they get the training with them. I mean, again, I was in the cop world when we did not, like, we shit on cameras. We were like, we don't want anybody record shit. Then we had the in-car cameras. The in-car cameras was my generation. Like, that was kind of standard for us. But damn, we weren't. I had an old school lieutenant get pissed at me because I put one of those pocket recorders in my lapel or my front pocket. And I did that so I could record interactions that the car wasn't picking up. I could walk into a house and be able to record, and I would, let people know this is being recorded. It wasn't anything secret. But man, because he was old school, are you trying to record other cops? Are you trying to get people in trouble? What are you doing? I'm like, no, I'm trying to show what we're dealing with. And there's two sides of the story. And if we only have my written statement, if something went down wrong, or the subject's written statement, there can be some stuff that's missed. And this reduces that. So the funny story was, he goes, who gave you permission? I said, there's nothing in policy that says I can't. And he goes, and there's also nothing in policy that says you can. And I'm telling you, you can't. So I said, you're right. You're the lieutenant. At that point, now that you said I can't, I won't. So but the evolution was now it's standard. Like, most cops love having the body camera because of what it shows. And it became more or less unified around the United States. And in fact, if something happens and an agency doesn't have it, they come down on you, usually through the media pressure and the political pressure. So what I'm saying at the end is, if we actually come together and get better about being on the same page, there's less discrepancies and there's less finger pointing and there's less issues. Is it perfect? Absolutely not. There will be crap to deal with, but it's better than kind of where we're at now, where can be such discrepancies from one area to another, or one agency to another, or one company to another. There can be significant. I think where it should first start out is the commercial world, kind of like it's the white paper version, because we can say, hey, the commercial world doesn't even have state standards to follow. Like, law enforcement, at least usually, not all, we got more states now that have a standard, but at least every state has a law enforcement standard. You have to do X amount of hours of training and so on and so forth. So we could, if we decided to do this, say, hey, just like the UK, if you're a commercial company and you're providing bomb dog services or detection dog services of whatever type, you have to accomplish these things, these many hours of training, this kind of testing, and then upon completion, you have this seal. And if that seal, and this kind of exists, the National Safety Act, those who want to provide bomb dogs to the NFL, you got to do that thing. And if you don't, you ain't getting hired. The NFL ain't going to take you. So I think if we could start in a realm like that, show that this has legs to it and it has more positive than negative, we could probably slowly get the law enforcement world to do it. But it'll take, we both know this. There's two things that change law enforcement: blood or the Supreme Court. You're either made to do it legally, or because someone died or lost, their severe functions of life, we go, this really sucks that Jimbo died. From now on, we're not going to do it that way anymore. We're going to do it like this. Or the Supreme Court says, you shall do this moving forward. Then we are disgruntled about it. We're like, that's some bullshit, but we don't have a choice. So until at some point something like that happens, it's going to be a tough road ahead to create a unified standard.
So if you had the ability to wave a magic wand and change things, let's say on the law enforcement side and then on the civilian side of canine detection, would it be the same? Would it be different? And what would it be?
There would be differences, because on the law enforcement side, there's the aspect of lethal force that's going to potentially come into play depending on the detection or depending on the canine discipline. The commercial world is less dealing with that. The commercial world, again, does not usually have assets in place to handle after the fact of a canine call, whether it be an alert or interest or whatever it is. So, but we need to have something, because we both know this. As police, if you're a cop and you see this little handler come walk. And the funny part is I'm now on the other side of the fence. When I come walking up to the cops and I'm wearing my little logo, my polo shirt, my pants, they're like, look at this fucking fat clown showing up. Like, what is he doing now? And then once I get to talk to them and they're like, oh, you were a cop before, blah, blah, blah. Then the guard comes down a little bit, but we all know it. The law enforcement sector is always going to look, not want to say necessarily down at, but they're going to look at you differently because our thought is I had to go put in time. I had to go through training. I had to go through testing. I had to go do these things, whatever it was, in order to do this job I'm doing now. That commercial world is, and I'll just bring it up, in this way. I'll have Sally Joe send me an email. I'm so excited to become a bomb dog handler. I want to do whatever I can do. And I got my new puppy that I got from the pound, and I really want to train it. I've been watching Cameron Ford canine videos, and I think I got this. And I love the enthusiasm. I love the desire to do it. But there's no rules about what they need to do to get there. And the problem is, what I run into frequently is when they come to me, I say, this is how this is going to be. These are the requirements we have in order to get to it, get to the end state. And if they don't like it or the dog doesn't do it, they just go find somebody else. And they shop around until they can get somebody to bless them to go do this. And that doesn't happen as easily in the law enforcement world. So because of that loose standard or lack of standard, the professional law enforcement community or military community will look at the commercial entity version of this and go, I don't know. Because they're right. It could be they did go to Snoopy school and Snoopy school said they were certified and off they go. They're out there doing it. But that agency said, we had X amount of hours. We had these reviews, these benchmarks, and we do it in some cases, maybe more frequently. I could even argue both ways on that one. I could argue a commercial bomb dog handler gets more work than a law enforcement dog handler, a law enforcement bomb dog handler. Law enforcement bomb dog handler may not get nearly as much work, especially independent contractor commercial dog handlers. Some of those have a shit ton of experience in comparison in a time frame. Let's just say, call it a year. A commercial bomb dog handler may have, they could have weeks upon weeks of bomb dog work, where that law enforcement canine handler, depending on where they're stationed at or where they work at, may only get 20 searches an entire year. That commercial handler had 20 searches in 3 months. So it's relative, and both sides have truth to what they see. And I keep saying that because it isn't a one-sided, it isn't an all or nothing kind of mentality for us. We have to be understanding of, if you're looking at it from this lens, there's this view of it. And if you look at it from this lens, there's also this view of it. So
on the private sector side, one of the ways I try to combat some of the stigma of they're not as good, not as professional, not as proficient, is it helps. I'm still in law enforcement, so I could always, rely on that. I could always rely on the fact that, hey, the standards that your bomb dogs and law enforcement have to meet is the same standards we meet. We deploy much more often, to the point you're making. We certify through the same alphabet soup that you guys do, for the purposes of just saying that we can, not that we find a bunch of value in it. We know that we have to certify, and we will. But it's nice to be able to say, oh, I've heard that certification before. That's what our guys use, and that's nice to hear that you guys are certifying to that too. But then we have to put our money where our mouth is and say, here's a training aid, put it out. Can we find it or not? Don't tell us where it is. Let's just go to work. And that ultimately is the test that we all should strive to be able to pass, and with confidence. And guess what? If we fail, then we fail, and then we learn something from that failure as well. But at least we're going to be transparent about it. And I think for us, that does a lot for the confidence of the people that are considering using our services.
Yep. That's for us, is that we call red team. So we say red team us,
Gotcha.
put us through the gauntlet. I'm not expecting perfection. I, of course, ideally want it, but if something gets past us, and doing it without the little gotcha, we're not trying to screw you over, but do it in a realistic way that these teams, because we both know this, I could flip the coin and go do it to the law enforcement side and make it embarrassing too. So let's keep the playing field fair, do what's reasonable, do what will probably be realistic, and see what the outcomes are. And if there's a deficiency, great. I'm glad we did this to identify the deficiency, so I can either remove the team, make adjustments, whatever we got to do. I'd rather do it again under the safety of it didn't happen for real, but we were able to identify it through a testing phase. There's things so that's a thing that kind of gets confused. There's training, which is great. Then there's testing, very different. Double blind is testing, and training is typically your single blind. And a lot of people will call it double blind training. And I'm like, because again, if I'm not trainer and I'm not there, I can't really call it training because I'm not seeing things. I'm not going to fix it in the moment, right? Technology levels that a little bit by I could have, like what I do a lot of times is I have somebody who doesn't know the answer going with the handler, filming it. So the training comes afterwards, right? The results are the results, but I'm looking to see, did what the handler explained to me, or what I also make every handler write things down after the search. You have to handwrite it. I don't let you type it in your phone. You must handwrite this out, because if you take the time to handwrite it out, you're going to think a little bit more and you remember a little bit more. And then when they have failures that happen, or there's a discrepancy in what we see, they're not allowed to go address it right away. I always tell them, take your loss, sit on it for a while. And it drives some handlers nuts. Like, again, I've just been recently in New Jersey and San Diego, and I did the same things to them. And a lot of handlers are used to, once they mess up, go right back in there, run it again. I'm like, no, screw you. You have to deal with, this sucks. You didn't find it. You missed it. You're not allowed to go rerun it again. Because I said, what happens if I let you go back in there and rerun it? You're going to forget about it. And you're going to put in your training sheet, you found it. No, you have to write in your training sheet now, you had a miss. And for whatever the reason was. The cool thing is you're going to do is you're going to write out what you can take accountability for it, whatever it is. And what is your corrective action that you're going to employ the next time to stop that from happening, or to try to address it? And as much as our egos don't like that, or as handlers going, well, my dog missed it. Now your dog doesn't give a shit at the end of the day. Of course it loves reinforcement, but it also loves being out of the car that's been sitting in for 6 hours during the shift to get out and go do something. So I want handlers to feel things. I want them to embrace the suck, embrace the difficulty of it, take the lessons, and have the accountability to step forward and try to become better about it, versus the easy way, which is go run it again. All 10 dogs in training are running the same hides. The dogs are using each other, all these things that aren't realistic. I want us to go through some of the pain and some of the failures so you can actually get better, versus preventing you from those failures. Preventing you, or allowing you to make it up or redo it, isn't going to make you better. It's going to create a false sense of confidence in most cases, and reduces accountability that we should take in what we do.
Welcome to the next step, the next phase, where the sky ain't the limit, it's just a place. Next level vibes for your ears today. Next level, next level. Take it up, never say